Hey everyone, it's David. If you saw me yesterday preaching at church and Sunday service, you would have heard us talk about the seven last words. Today is day two, and we're talking about the second of the seven last words. Yesterday, we talked about in a moment, everything could change. That in a moment where you realize, like, you were wrong against God, you've done wrong against God, and then you choose to accept Jesus and his sacrifice, in that moment, you are forgiven. And so today I want to continue on that theme in a moment because I want us to think about in a moment of faith. You know, I actually almost became an accountant. I know you need more than an associate's degree to be an accountant, but I almost finished that associate's degree program at Oakton Community College. Again, shout out to the Owls, go Owls. But in this moment, just speaking of moments, in this moment of realization, I kind of dropped it all. I had to pay a lot of money for dropping it all like that, but I dropped it all because I realized I never asked God what he wanted me to do. And to be honest, I never found out for myself what I wanted to do. Did I actually want to become an accountant or do what accountants do? And the funny story of how I chose accounting was I was a senior in high school. Shout out to Niles North, the Vikings. I guess I'm just shouting out everywhere I used to go. But I was a senior in Niles North, and I was sitting in the library. It was like our lunchtime, but I was trying to finish some work. I was sitting in the library with another friend, and other friends of ours were sitting in the table next to us. And it was like the last few weeks of school, so it wasn't too stressed. It was actually very chill, very relaxed. But I overheard one of my friends at the other table talking about their plans for the summer, and they were saying he was saying to the other friends at the table, like, I'm so excited because I've got this internship and I'm gonna become an accountant after that with them because I've got a relationship, a connection with them now through this internship, and it's gonna be a good paying job. And all of that I'm summarizing, but that's essentially what he said. And that's how I started to think for myself, oh, I should probably take up accounting in college. Well, long story short, I dropped accounting after like 5 years of just taking a few classes a semester. I dropped accounting. I started to say, God, okay, what do you want me to do? And I took some time off. And in that time off, my brother actually got a job at Athletical Physical Therapy. And then he asked me, hey, do you want to work as a rehab aide at this physical therapy clinic called Athletico? Shout out to the co. Nobody calls it that, but shout out to the co. And I was like, in my mind, I was hesitant because I had no idea what a rehab aide was. I had no idea what a rehab aide does. Like, what do they do? And what are they in charge of? And who do you have to talk to? Am I even qualified to be a rehab aide? That's what I was thinking about because I had never heard of a rehab aide in my life. I heard of like physical trainers and stuff like that would help you get better physically, for your sport and things like that. But I'd never heard of the physical therapy field. And long story short, I believe God used that job to truly open a new world to me that I didn't even know was available. This world of physical therapy where you could help people through movement and exercise to get better after an injury or a disease or something that derails them or something that limits them. And I didn't know this world existed until I got that job, and I realized I fell in love with it. The interaction you could have, the relationship you can build with patients. And it wasn't just like, you would see them once and then you'd never see them again. It was because you could see them over and over and help them get better and see them progress. And I was fascinated by that. I was passionate about that. And if it wasn't for my brother, thank you, Jed, for suggesting that and asking me to come on, I wouldn't have known what physical therapy was or what a rehab aide was, and that I could get a job as a physical therapist assistant. And so it bothered me for a while. When I remember that, it bothered me not because, if I had gotten that job sooner, then I would have learned about physical therapy sooner, and then I would have signed up for the program sooner. That's not why it bothered me. It bothered me because I realized all of that information about physical therapy, about rehab aids, about careers in physical therapy, all of that, it was available to me before my brother ever asked me to work there. It was available to me. Like, the internet was booming, all right? It was already like 2017, 2018, 2019. It was already very, very available. There's so much information out there that I could have learned about if only I had tried to examine it for myself. What I wanted in a career, what careers are out there, what careers are available. But that's why it bothered me. That's why I kind of felt like, man, I wish I didn't waste so much time on something that I wasn't passionate about. And it bothered me that I had to see it just to believe that that career was a possibility. You know, we pick up in Jesus' story here in Luke chapter 23, verses 35 to 43, and it says here, the people stood watching. And I want to point some things out to you. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, he saved others. Let him save himself if he's God's Messiah, the chosen one. The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. You hear that again, that idea of Jesus saving himself. And there was a written notice above him which read, this is the king of the Jews. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him, saying, aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. And before I continue, I want to point out there were two criminals that were crucified next to Jesus, one on his right, one on his left. Both of the criminals, as according to Matthew and Mark, actually started off, both of them, insulting Jesus and hurling insults at Jesus. It just so happens that this one criminal continued to hurl insults at Jesus, saying, aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself. There it is again. And us. But the other criminal rebuked him. There was a change. Something happened. The other criminal rebuked him, saying, don't you fear God, he said. Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he turned. He said to Jesus, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus answered him, truly, I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise. Now, we just take a look at these two criminals. These two criminals, like we said about Jesus, speaking his last words, his last 7 words, or last 7 phrases or sentences. Jesus was going to give something that was really important, because what happens when you have an opportunity, when you're about to die, and you have an opportunity still to speak something as your last words, those are really important words. Those words can describe a lot. Those words can tell people how to handle your money. Those words can tell people what kind of legacy you want to be remembered for. Those words can tell people, what you want them to do with their lives if they're your children, and what you want them to accomplish, what you hope for them, how much you love them. The words that you speak, if you have an opportunity right before you die, the words you speak before you die are really, really valuable and really important. And so, like Jesus, these criminals, these were the last words. I'm sorry, I don't know where that was. But these criminals, they were speaking their last words, just like Jesus was speaking his last words. And for these criminals who were desperate, about to die, just like Jesus was about to die, they chose what they chose to say. And here's this one criminal saying, aren't you the Messiah? Essentially mocking him, essentially insulting him, saying, you are not the Messiah. Prove yourself. Save yourself and us. Just on the chance, that somehow you save yourself, you prove yourself to be Messiah. Don't forget to save us too. But there's that common theme that the rulers, the Jewish people that were watching Jesus, the soldiers that were there watching Jesus, and then this criminal were asking Jesus to prove himself. They were saying, Jesus, show us that you are who you say you are. I just want to make a quick side note that for those who are saying Jesus never claimed to be Messiah, never claimed to be the Son of God verbatim, I think it's a low level way of thinking, because there's thousands of situations where, we read between the lines because we understand what's implied, and yet you have this this group of people, the Jewish people and the Roman people and this criminal on the cross, all acknowledging that Jesus somehow made a claim to messiahship. And here we are listening to people that are saying Jesus never said he was a Messiah, or he was the Messiah verbatim. And we won't accept that it was implied, if not literally said. So I just want to encourage you, it's okay to think higher than that, all right? But anyway, we continue. All these parties told Jesus, save yourself, because they wanted Jesus to prove to them that he was the Messiah, to prove right before their very eyes that he's the chosen one of God, that he is powerful, that he actually could save. They wanted Jesus to prove right before their very eyes. And I ran into that idea of I had to see it to believe it. And these people, they want to see it so they can believe it. And yet Jesus says later on after his resurrection, he says to Thomas, you believe because you see, but blessed are those who believe or who have not seen and yet believe. And so I'm encouraging you today to consider, how many times are you asking Jesus to prove himself before you believe him and you act with faith? What I mean by that is, how many times have you ever asked God to prove how he's going to get you out of this financial hole before you start giving? How many times are you going to ask God to prove his power and his ability before you start praying for healing for people? How many times are you going to ask God to prove to you to prove to you that he is in control before you start trusting him with situations that are clearly out of your control, which, if we're honest, there are more situations like that than there are not? How many times are you going to ask God to prove himself so that you can finally believe him? And yet, what happened with this other criminal on the cross? The one that rebuked the other one, even though they both hurled insults at Jesus at first. What changed? Nothing really changed. I mean, nothing really different happened. They were all just hanging there for hours together. But what changed in that span between him hurling insults and this moment of faith? In this moment of faith that he put in Jesus, asking Jesus to remember him when he came into his kingdom. Because he realized, okay, Jesus is actually going to have power beyond this death that he is experiencing, beyond this execution that they were all experiencing. So he put his faith in Jesus and said, I believe you. I believe you. What changed between insulting Jesus and putting his faith in Jesus? I would tell you this, that what changed was not a situation. What changed was not a word that Jesus said, or that, something that happened in front of their very eyes. What changed was that the criminal went from asking Jesus to prove himself to examining the proof that was already there. This criminal that rebuked the other one for insulting Jesus, aren't you the Messiah? Why don't you save yourself and us? This criminal that rebuked him, saying, don't you fear God? You're under the same judgment as him. We're all about to die. We're all being executed. We're all being punished. But me and you, we're being punished for stuff that we deserve. We're being punished justly, but this man has done nothing wrong. Now, how could he know that Jesus did nothing wrong? I mean, like I said, nothing really happened on the cross except them losing their lives. So what happened in that time? He examined what was already available, the proof. Instead of asking Jesus to prove himself right then and there to save all of them, he just examined the proof that was already there about Jesus, that he healed the blind man, that he helped the poor, the widows, that he healed the sick, that he made a mute person talk again, that he set people free from evil spirits that were tormenting their minds and their lives, that he actually raised Lazarus from the dead, another girl and another boy from the dead. And these were things that people were saying about Jesus that they had heard or that they had seen for themselves. And this was the proof that was already available to this man on the cross. So nothing new happened. He just went from wanting Jesus to prove himself to looking at the proof that was already there about Jesus. And when he looked and examined the proof that was already there about Jesus, he said, this man has done nothing wrong. We deserve what we're getting right here. Me and you, this other criminal, you and I, we're both criminals. We deserve this punishment. We deserve this. This is just punishment for us. But Jesus, he's done nothing wrong. He's been a great teacher. He's been a prophet. He's done miracles. And he believed the proof that was already there about Jesus. And he chose to put his faith in Jesus. I'm encouraging you today to consider what proof is already there about Jesus. What proof is already there that would encourage you and challenge you and convict you to put your trust in him? How many times more are you going to ask Jesus to prove himself before you trust him? Before you trust him, before you give, before you commit, before you give him your life? How many more times are you going to ask Jesus to prove himself? Save yourself. Show your power. Show us your plans. How exactly are you going to get me and my wife or me and my family out of this tension, out of this issue? How are you going to do it, Jesus? I want to know. How many times are you going to ask God to prove himself before you look at the track record of Jesus? The track record, the proof that's already there. And look at how faithful he was back then. Look at how faithful he was to Abraham. When Abraham believed him, God had not done anything yet that he had promised for Abraham. And yet, Abraham was able to look at the track record of God. Noah, when he was building the ark, God had never shown him what an ark was, what an ark does. And yet he believed God. And all these stories of David and Goliath, nobody's ever heard or explained how a young man who has never had military experience could defeat a giant who has had military experience and fighting experience since he was a boy. Nobody has ever shown David that that was a possibility. Nobody could prove that that was possible. And yet David believed God before any of that could be proven. So I ask you again, what are you going to do in this moment? Are you going to wait for Jesus to keep proving himself before you believe in him, before you put your faith in him, before you trust in him? Maybe it's that business you were supposed to start. And you've never seen somebody start a business. Maybe for you, you've never seen somebody finish college, get a degree in your family. Maybe it's that relationship you have to break, you have to end. But you've never seen how somebody could do it successfully and come out the other side more whole and more at peace. Or maybe it's that question you have to ask to marry this person, but you're afraid to commit, and your parents haven't had good marriages because they've been divorced, and even the next one they got divorced again. Or maybe your family's been broken before and you don't know if you want to have children. What is it that is stopping you from trusting the proof of God's faithfulness, the proof of Jesus' track record, so that you can move forward trusting him and acting in that trust in him? I'm encouraging you. Look at the track record of Jesus. Look at his faithfulness. Look to what he's done and what he's shown, what he's proven. And then moving forward, looking at the things you're not certain of, trust him. Because you can believe once you see it, but that's not really faith. See, the opposite of faith, maybe you've heard this before, maybe you haven't. The opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is sight. When you can see it happen in front of your very eyes, you don't need faith to believe that it could happen. But it's in those uncertainties. It's in those risk-filled decisions, opportunities, that you need faith. Because if not for God, everything could crumble. If not for God, this could all fail. And so I encourage you, as you consider, we could have talked about how, on your very last breath, if you would believe in Jesus, He will save you. He will forgive you if you put your faith in him. He will do that. And this is a great example of that. But I wanted you to look at it from a different perspective and see that all these people were asking Jesus to prove himself. But this one criminal decided, I'm going to look at the proof that's already there. I'm going to look at the track record of Jesus and choose to put my trust in him. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. God bless you guys.